All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Tech Confab podcast. I am Joe Budu. I'm going to be your host for today. And as you know, I engage in insightful conversations with experts in the tech industry on topics such as AI, artificial intelligence, innovation, science, and more. Today is going to be a great one. I have my guest waiting on the line today. He goes by the name Raymond Akornor, and he has developed, he's a developer or the creator of Playlister, which is an app that's used to convert your Apple playlist to Spotify. So he's going to be my guest for today. If you're watching the stream today, just share the links with your friends. You can share on YouTube, you can share on Facebook if you're watching. We're streaming live actually on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope right now. So wherever you're watching, you can share the link with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter, you can retweet the link. And if you are watching on Facebook, you can just share with your network, to your groups. You can share on your broadcast list and all that. And as well as that, let me know who's watching today. You can just type in the comment section wherever you're watching. Just type in your name and where you're watching from. I'd like to know who's watching today. It's going to be a great one. The topic for today is how to stand out as a developer. Don't be worried, it's not only for developers. We'll try to be a little bit broad today and talk about stuff that apply across board, but it's an extra plus if you're a dev, of course. All right, we'll be starting in a little bit. Let me know who's watching. Yes, welcome to the stream, Sledge. Welcome, Griffith. Yes, Griff. Welcome to the stream. I'll be starting in a minute, so just stay tuned. All right, Ray, welcome to the
Yo, my
show.
guy. Thanks for having me. How
Yeah,
you
yeah,
doing?
yeah. I'm doing great, bro. How's work and how
Yes.
things going?
Normal level, I've been.
Normal levels. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I spoke a little bit about you. So I would want you to just introduce yourself to everybody. What have you been up to, for the past couple of years, and just introduce yourself to my viewers so that we can start the show.
All right. I'm Raymond Teta Akornor. I work at Ampersand as a backend developer. But I, I think in my free time, I just try to like go deep on things that interest me. So be it like economics or some math or computer programs. Yeah, that, that's who I am.
All right, great. Yeah, so you are currently a backend engineer at Ampersand Technologies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I mean that's interesting because I interviewed your boss more or less a couple of weeks ago, or your colleague. So it's nice to have another member of the Ampersand team on the show today.
Yeah. I think you
Yes,
should take time to interview everyone here. Like everyone here is doing amazing work. You should do that
nice.
when you have the chance.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I would make sure to add some of you guys to my lineup, of course. I can see you have a lot of fans on in the comment section below.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, I mean, the way I got to know about you was obviously from your, I don't know whether to call it your flagship personal project, currently, which is the Playlister app, which is an open source tool that you made to convert playlists from Apple Music to Spotify. Can you tell us more about this? And then maybe after that, we'll talk more about some of the other interesting and cool stuff that you've been able to do on the side.
Yeah, so as you rightly said, Playlister is a web app that lets you like convert playlists in between like the major music streaming platform, Apple Music and Spotify. So I think it all got started. So I had a lot of friends on Apple Music, and I was listening to Spotify, and then from time to time they would share playlists with me, and I couldn't listen to them because I was on Spotify. But then after a while, it became clear to me that they had the same music catalogs. So and one song on one platform is the same as the song on another platform. So I just built like a command line to just do the conversion. And then from time to time, people started asking me for it. So I just built a UI on top of it, and people have been using it ever since. So that's playlist.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's really interesting for for me as a developer to see some of these things because hardly would you see open source software being developed by Ghanaians or even Africans, and no matter how simple it is, it's really important for people to contribute to open source projects. And like I've really been inspired. I'm sure other developers will also be inspired by the stuff that you're doing. And these are small tools, right? And plugins that do like basically solve problems that we have, like day-to-day challenges that we have. So I think it's a really great innovation, and I'm sure a lot. So basically, how many people use the tool right now?
Um, I think like we do like 50 users every day, like on average. So some days 50, some days more than that. So I think yeah, that's it. And then you can do the math for the whole. You can do the math for a month and then
Yeah,
for a year. So I haven't had time to do that, but then
that's
like
like 150.
50, 60
Sorry,
people, yeah,
1,500 in a month.
every day. Yeah, those are just visits though. Um,
Okay, okay,
but then certain people go beyond just looking at the websites, like converting playlists. So yeah.
okay. That's nice. Um, So I can see a lot of people in the comment section actually use your tool. So I think it's been beneficial to a number of people. Um, so what other stuff have you done apart from Playlister? And can we talk about some of the other notable ones?
Uh, I don't know about notable, but I tend to try to like just work on like projects that interest. There's this one Artista. So
Okay,
this was like I don't know back in 2017. I think Facebook had this bots challenge, and then you had to build bots and then submit it.
okay,
And yeah, and my entry was Artista. So what it does is you give it a picture, and then it'll kind of like redraw the picture using shapes. I think it will. I was lucky to get into the finals, and that's how I met like other programmers here building other things. Another project I've worked on is Better Search. Anyone who has experience with like iMessage on the Mac
yeah,
is well aware that it has like a terrible search experience. So, like trying to learn Swift, I just built that. I haven't had the time to work on it like in a while. But what else you do is you can quickly query the SQLite database, which stores the messages on iMessage, and is more precise. And I tend to use it from time to time. So I think those are the main projects that I can mention here. But I also have projects that uh, are just for myself. A good example is I think for like sometimes you want to read, but sometimes you want to be read to. So I built this Chrome extension which will just allow you to highlight maybe some texts on an article you are trying to read, and then it will like use voice to speech, text to
Text
speech
to
to
speech,
just
yeah.
read about to you. Yeah, Google's text to speech. So yeah.
Yeah, one thing that really strikes me about, the work you're doing is that, for a lot of individuals, anytime we, even like, especially for developers, anytime we face a problem or a challenge, the first thing is to try to probably search online if there's already an existing tool or something. Did you go through those processes and realize that, oh, there's nothing like that available, or what was the development process over there, or you just wanted
Um,
to try your hands on some of these yourself?
yeah, so I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Occasionally I might go look out there and see whether someone has done something like this. But then I also enjoy the process of like just learning how these things work. So I might just do it myself. But then if I also like feel like just looking for the whether someone has done it before, I'll just go look. So I think we shouldn't like that doesn't bother me too much. Even if someone has done it, like there's a lot of domain knowledge that is like, in the project the person has built. And the only way I can also get to know these things is if I kind of build it myself. So like it's a little bit of both. Sometimes I'll look whether someone has done it before, and chances are someone has. But sometimes I'll just build it myself and later find out that someone has already built something like that. So
All right.
I
Wonderful.
think that way, yeah, I try to do good.
Okay, that's nice. So I can see some testimonials in the chat section. Elikem is saying that Polystar has helped me discover new tunes. Um,
He's sitting right here.
talking about better search, he's saying that it's better than the iMessage developers or the Apple developers, and better than all of Google's messaging apps. That I would agree to easily. All right, interesting, interesting. Um, so what, like, what would you say, like, to any developer who is probably afraid, right? He thinks that, the codes that he's writing is not significant to, put it up on GitHub, or he feels it's too hard to build a plugin, or it's too hard to build a small tool like the ones that you've built, or to build an app and put them out there. What would you say about this? Like, how is the experience like? Would you say it's easy or it's difficult, or what would you say to encourage anyone watching, to do some of the stuff that you're doing?
I think it'll be hard for me to speak on this because I also go through that like what I'm about to put there. I don't know if it's good enough and things like that. But then sometimes you be like just like what the hell? What's the worst that can happen? And you put it there. Um, Even for playlist, I think it was a colleague that forced me to put it out. I just showed it to him. He was like, "This is good. You should put it out there." I was like, "Nah, I don't know whether like people will use it." He was like, "Nah, this is good," and he just put the tweet out, and a lot of people like came in and started using it. So I think you never know, but just put it out. Like who's watching? Because chances are no one will come to your profile and come look at anything there. So it will be there and no one will see it. And then there are chances that someone will see it and want to make it better. And I think you should be open to that too. And another thing is when you know your code is out there, you tend to like make sure it's the best. So that's even a way to improve as a programmer.
Okay, all right. So I
So there
think
are a lot of
we
things that go into it. Just put it out there.
nice, nice. I think we've delved a little bit into open source and, contributing to open source. So probably we should, for the benefit of our listeners, right? Can you help us understand what exactly open source software is, and how open source works? Probably give some examples of some open source tools, and how your experience has been or contributing to open source and all that. Let's just talk about open source
So,
software.
okay. I think open source from its name is I think software where the source code to the project is in the open. I think it is a little different from free software, but people tend to confuse it. So code can be open source, but it doesn't necessarily make it free. So that's open source. Most developers in my age group are like in a generation where we tend to use a lot of like open source. So when it comes to frameworks, we used to build web services. We have the Django's, we have the Ruby's, and they are all open source. My personal experience with contributing to open source was with Zule. It's a sort of like open source Slack
Okay.
with a better trading model. Yeah, so I think a couple years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I was trying to contribute to open source, and the thing is, you go on GitHub and see a lot of projects, and usually you know which one to go for. So the way I went about it was to say what are like the languages I'm trying to get better at, right? And what are the frameworks I'm trying to get better at, and probably contribute to a project that uses those like programming languages and frameworks. So I picked Python and Django, and then Zulip happened to like to use all those, use Python and use Django. So it went well for me. But one of the things that was very great about Zulip is they take like documentation very seriously, and they have a really warm community. Another thing is, if you contribute to Zulip, a lot of the discussions you have relating Zulip are on Zulip. You get me?
Okay.
Because it's a chat, yeah, software. And so I just kind of went through their documentation and onboarding and new contributor, and it was really good. They'll tell you like everything you have to know. They'll explain the subsystems to you. They'll explain how Linton works and everything like that. And the community was also great. So I just went into the issue tracker. Um, so they'll tag the issues. Good first issue. That's for people who are like coming first contributors. And I picked one, but then I didn't even contribute to finish that issue until like months after. Every time now and then I'll be like, will I be able to do this? But then one time I was like, let me just go head deep into this. So I set up my development environment and just went into it. And I've really learned a lot. I've learned how to like architect software with like a lot of users. I've learned like various pitfalls. I've learned a lot about security. So, and I don't think I'll otherwise I'll be able to learn these things if it wasn't for like open source software. And it feels good to know that people actually use something you're working on. So I think that's a plus. So I'll definitely recommend that to anyone who wants to contribute to open source software.
Yeah,
They
that's
should just
nice.
like, yeah, and
Yeah, but I mean, one would imagine that the like they would be overwhelmed with the technicalities or the sophistication of the open source software. For example, let's say an open software like Firefox that millions of people use all over the globe. Like you would be afraid that, oh, this would be so complicated that I can't even understand the code, let alone contribute. What would you say to that per your experience?
so I think it happens to everyone. When you are getting into it, you think you'll be working on the entire project, but you find out you'll be working on just a small part of the whole project.
Okay.
So on Firefox, you might just end up working on like developer tooling. And I think that developer tooling is written like a lot of JavaScript. And you are familiar with JavaScript, or you are familiar with like the languages that you need to work on just that small part.
Okay.
So the misconception is you are going to be working on the entire project. That's not how it works. You just work on like a very small part of the entire project, and that's something that you will be able to do. And these projects also have like very great community like around it. So with Zulip, you can ask any question like, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this? How do I do it? And like every time, someone will get back to you with how to solve the problem. So it's
Okay.
not as hard as we think. And I
Nice.
wish
Nice.
more people would get
Yeah. Yeah. So at this point, I want my viewers to like appreciate, open source software, right? You look at Android, right? Android in itself is open source to some extent.
it.
Firefox, the browser, is open source. Um,
Yeah,
the framework of Chrome, the Google Chrome, the Chromium browser is open source. Linux is open source. So many tools that people use on a day-to-day basis are all based on the foundation of open source software. And so if you're watching,
yeah,
trust me, like the apps or the programs that you use, a bulk of them would be open source. I think, if you should ask me, I say, probably about 70% or 60% of, most software is actually open source, right? Um, or
and,
use open source tools, right? I don't think there's any, proprietary software that doesn't make use of any open source software at all. Even Microsoft, uses open source software, and even Apple and all that. They all use it to build their components, and I like open source is integral to basically the development of technology generally, and so that's really the importance. So now next, for somebody who's watching, right, who is not a developer, can that person also contribute to open source software? Or how can a non-dev contribute to open source software?
uh,
Somebody's watching, he's a
so
he's a business student, or somebody studied social science or something. What would you say to that person?
um, so so when it comes to like open source software, right? The thing we tend to like think is just the code, it's just the software. But then we tend to leave out other parts of software like documentation and marketing websites and things like that. And I think those are parts of software that are like equally important. One thing about Zulu that I really, really liked was if you were writing code and you were going to change some behavior, you actually have to also, in the same pull request, changing that behavior, you have to open and change the documentation, right?
Yeah,
So this is to say documentation is very important. And if you are a non-programmer, documentation is somewhere you can contribute
yeah,
because it's writing. Maybe you might have to understand like how the system works overall, but I think that's somewhere you can still contribute if you know how to write. So that's another way you can contribute to open source software by writing. Another way is marketing because they also have marketing websites, and maybe you are good at these things. You can also pitch some ideas, and they'll be happy to hear them from you.
okay, great. We have a question in the comments. So Heli is
Yeah.
asking, what keeps you moving, Raymond? I asked this because of the number you gave with regards to the number of users per day. So Heli is asking what actually keeps you moving, like what really encourages you to continue with the work that you're doing.
Well, I don't know. I enjoy what I'm doing, so and that's all I know how to do well. So I just keep doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think another thing to note is that open source software is usually you're usually not getting paid for it directly. Most of the time, you're not getting paid for it. Some of the times, people, get paid through advertisements and others, but then at the core, open source software is not really a paid venture, and that also brings another, aspect or another philosophy where people have to be able to contribute their parts, right, to the community. So it becomes a community effort. And you're probably
Yes.
doing a corporate work or you're doing a 9 to 5, but then apart from that, you can also be using your spare time to also contribute to the softwares that you use to work or to get money to your table. So then that aspect as well has to also be encouraged as well, and especially in the Ghanaian community and African community, for people to also um, spend their time or contribute their time and their skills into contributing to open source software, and really um, all hands on deck. Like everybody, no matter your skill level, I believe you can make some contribution to open source. If it could be
Yeah.
any, and like I could add to the area of the non-devs, right? There are aspects where you can do, for example, translation, right? So let's say there's an app that's
Yes.
in English, you can, and you understand French, Spanish, you can offer to translate the application or the text within the application. Another good example is, with a self-driving company which does AI, uses AI to to build an autonomous vehicle. So with that one, they basically need people to be able to help label the training data that they use. So they would have images where you would have to indicate, you basically have to paint and indicate where the cars are, where the human beings are, where the road is, where the lane markings are, and all that. And that task, for example, doesn't need a developer. So like I think there are a lot of areas where even non-devs can contribute to open source. No matter your educational background and whatnot, you should be able to contribute with minimal, training or minimal skills. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
do you have anything to add on that, Ray?
No, I think you said all.
Great, great, great. All right, so guys, we are streaming live on Facebook, on YouTube, and Periscope as well. So, you can drop in any question that you have for Raymond or myself with respect to the topic today. How to stand out as a developer. My host for today is Raymond Akornor. He's the backend engineer at Ampersand Technologies. So feel free to drop in your questions and comments, contributions wherever you're watching, whether you're watching on Periscope or YouTube or Facebook. You can just drop in the question and then we would answer it for you. Yeah. So then, yeah, Ray, let's continue with the conversation. So now, back to the heading or the main headline for today about how to stand out as a developer, and the reason why I we are delving into topics such as contributions to open source and the personal projects that you have done is that I believe that that is one of the key ways to stand out as a developer, right? Because you could write a lot of things on your CV, or you could have whatever educational background or educational level, but then there are a couple of things that actually make you stand out as a developer, and one of them is what we just spoke about, your contributions to open source, or your basically your GitHub profile is something that could basically land you a job, or could be the extra push to get you the job that you're looking for. And basically it's for any project that you've done, for a company, you most of the time you can't share that code with an employer. So basically, your GitHub profile or your contributions to open source is one sure way to show or to prove your skill sets to anybody who's looking to hire you. Uh, so Ray, what do you think about this? Do you think this is a good indicator, and what are some of the other ways that you are using to stand out as a developer, and what other tools or what other methods you think devs should use in in standing out or making themselves stand out as devs.
Um, I think you just said it. I mean, for people to want to hire you, they want to see something like tactile you've done besides what you've listed on your resume, and if you can like show them something, be it open source contributions or side projects you worked on, and I think that puts you like um, a step ahead. Whether it's fair to people who don't have like that contributions, I don't particularly know, but I think that's how it is right now, and you'll be in a better position if you could show a prospective employer things you worked on. So yeah,
Yeah, so
that's one way to stand out. I don't know about any other way.
yeah, one that comes to mind in addition to that is, Stack Overflow. I don't know, have you made any contributions to Stack? Have you answered any questions on Stack Overflow?
I think people have answered every question I've ever wanted to answer. So
Yeah,
a lot of brilliant people
that's
there.
also what I tend to think. Like, when you go to Stack Overflow, any question you can imagine, it's been answered
Yeah,
almost.
somebody answer. Like,
Yeah, but then I think that that's also another key area where employers
I think blogging too,
blogging as well,
blogging,
right?
writing about things you know, it's a good way to show expertise in an area, writing about it. It's something I've been challenging myself to do, and maybe if I have the time, I'll start doing it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. So like, creating a Medium article, or creating a post on what your favorite blog platform, um, creating videos on YouTube, educational videos on YouTube. I mean that not so much, but then that all those contribute a lot to basically your profile as a developer, and could be like the extra push to make you stand out as a dev amongst many. Um, I mean,
Yeah,
in my experience, hiring people in terms of, or being part of the hiring process in terms of hiring devs, it's one thing that really makes you stand out once you've been able to do a lot of practical projects that are actually visible on GitHub. Um, um, and also because in as part of the hiring process, certain employers also have a practical aspect where you'll be given a task to do a simple task within a couple of days. Um, of course, if you've already been doing, GitHub, you've already been contributing to open source, some of these things will just come so easily to you. And I think that even Git is a skill on its own that, in fact, almost every developer needs to know once you are collaborating with other people in a team. And so, and being able to work within the architecture or the framework of open source would teach you some of these skills, um,
yeah.
because in open source, okay, maybe you can talk about how thousands of people are able to collaborate on a single code base. How do they ensure that there are no errors? How do they ensure the quality of the code that people are contributing? Basically, how does all that work, Raymond?
I haven't worked on a code base where 1,000 people are contributing, so I don't think I can speak on that. But I think there are a few like tens or hundreds of people working on like projects I've seen, and so the first off is like documenting like processes on how to do things every step of the way. Another thing is using Git and how to go about like opening a pull request, reviewing and things like that. Um, Another thing like I noticed in Zulip is their code base just for lengthening. It's like it's really big. There are a lot of rules making sure that the code is looking consistent on everyone's laptop because there might be occasions where maybe someone prefers like a comma after the last argument should have a comma or bracket should go here or something like that. And then another one, another developer on the team isn't so much like into that, and that might just create a lack of consistency in the code base. So usually we just delegate that to the linter, and it takes care of that for us. And that's something you'll be surprised how like you'll be surprised how important that is in a code base where a lot of people are collaborating and on. Another thing that's also important is tests, where code base that's frequently changing. It would be nice to kind of guarantee that the changes you are introducing doesn't break the code base. So tests are important in that as well. So those are the things I have seen for code bases where a lot of people are touching it, like the things people do in large code bases.
Great, great,
Yeah,
great. I think it's interesting having this discussion in these times, where COVID-19 and all has affected the way people work. And my past videos, I've discussed, topics surrounding the future of work and accelerating, the that future of work and all, and topics surrounding those. And so now, we can see
yeah,
that now it's becoming a global market where remote work is now highly encouraged, and so you're basically
yeah,
able to you are competing, or people are competing with people from all over the globe for the same position, because now
yeah.
it's been opened up for remote work. So now, how can someone in Ghana, or developers in Ghana or Africa, benefit from this opportunity as a dev, and how can you basically empower yourself to be competitive, or to be able to compete with others coming from other parts of the world?
Yeah. I think just do what you enjoy and you should be able to show it. I think it's as simple as that. And yeah, you should do what you enjoy. If it's building mini like projects, you should do that. And not only should you like do that, you should be able to like tell people about it and show it to people, put online. That's something I'm struggling with myself, but I think it's something that is important. As you don't only compete with developers in your like local area, you compete with like developers around the world, and you have to stand out somehow or catch like a prospective employer's attention. And the way I think like I will go about it is to show them that like I'm passionate about what I do, and that's by like building projects and then showing it. I'm sure there are a lot of people who like I'm referring to like Ghanaian developers I know who build projects, and people are really good. It's just that like no one will show it to you, so you won't know.
Yeah.
But people are really really good. So I think we should learn how to put our projects out there, and it's something I'm still figuring out myself.
Yeah, I think this is it brings us to the topic. It's something that I've been really thinking about and deliberating upon for the past couple of months. And it's part of the reasons why I started this YouTube channel. And you realize that Ghanaians and Africans generally are really underrepresented on the global setting, and the fact
Yeah, we
is,
spoke about that.
Ghanaians are really, really skilled and really talented, but then we are missing out on opportunities because of that underrepresentation that we are talking about, underrepresentation on the global
Yeah.
scale, on the internet. And it's some of these things that can, you know, boost you or take you up out there, because GitHub is a global platform, Stack Overflow is a global platform, YouTube is a global platform, and so once you're getting exposure on these on the internet, on Twitter, etc., it gives an employer the confidence of your skill set, and now you are able to compete with other people from other parts of the globe. And so I think this, just to add to some of the things that you said concerning empowering yourself as a developer, standing out as a dev, it's really really important for you to do these things. So I know some of us watching probably have a blog, you have maybe a YouTube channel, you have a GitHub account, you have a Twitter account. Use these platforms. You have a Medium profile. Use these platforms to put yourself out there and let people know what you're doing. Let people know the skills that you have. Let people know what they can learn from you, because I believe everybody watching here has some talent or some skill that they have, and you need to make the world know that, okay, this is what I know, this is what I can contribute to the body of knowledge, and then yeah, you can benefit from that as a dev or whatever occupation that you're doing. Um,
Yeah. I mean, another thing I'll like to say is, I think we should try to go deep on like on things. Like if
yeah,
there's something maybe like you want to know how databases work. I think there's a lot of documentation on like how internals of SQLite or internals of Postgres, and we should just try to go deep, like, because if they're all trying to say is hyper competitive out there, and you have to be competitive. One of the things that is good to bring to the table is an understanding of things not only on the surface but deep down. I think that's also something that will pay off.
nice one there. We have a question from Florent. He's asking any advice for
Hello.
newbies and projects to start working on as a newbie. Yeah, so that's an interesting question.
Yeah. I think there's something that took me a while to realize, which is as a newbie, you also see projects that you use, right? I'm sure you use WhatsApp and like a lot of different apps on your phone. I think if you don't have anything to work on at all, you can just pick a project you like and try to clone it. By cloning, I just mean try to build exact replication of what you see. You learn a lot that way, and it's something you shouldn't feel bad about. Like it's actually encouraged in our field of work. So
Yeah, okay, that's nice.
just take some time. So if you don't have any projects at all, pick a project or some software you enjoy using and try to replicate it.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
I think that's is a great way to learn.
Okay, yeah, so what I would add to that is that, depending on what area you're interested in, right? If you're interested in web development, if you're interested in, whether front end or back end, or you're interested in hardware programming, some of those would basically determine the best tool or the tools that you should be thinking of using or learning. So basically, I think you can start from an idea, right? An idea that you have that you'd want to build yourself, right? That could be a starting point, or you could pick a programming language of your choice and learn. All these programming languages have tutorials on the website, or free tutorials on YouTube or Udemy or wherever you'd want to access the tutorials. And then most of the time it would come with a very basic project that you can do after learning the basics. So on web development, to-do lists. If you're learning React or Vue or something like that, most of the time a to-do list is one of the first things that you do. Or for web frameworks, usually they'll say you can do a blog application that can post articles. These are simple stuff that you can build as a newbie. So I don't know whether you already know any programming languages already. So I mean, if you already know a particular programming languages, obviously it'll be cool for you to just use what you know and then try to build something with it. But if you should ask me, Raymond, what's the best programming language for starters, for beginners?
I always they talk. It's Python.
Python, yeah.
You should learn. Yeah, you should learn some Python.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, but I'm biased.
Python,
I'm
yeah,
biased.
yeah, of course, man. I mean, Python is arguably probably the most popular, programming languages for devs right now. Right up at the top there with JavaScript and I don't know, maybe some other language. But then, yeah, Python has a lot of use cases. If you learn Python, you're really good. You're in a good place when it comes to development. Like so, it's a no-brainer, right? Because Python is used for web dev, it's used for machine learning stuff, it's used for normal hardcore programming. It's used for so many things. So Python could be a very good option. But I love Ruby. So I think Ruby is a really good place to start as a beginner because Ruby is really elegant. It's the most elegant programming language if you ask me, and you can do so much with so few lines of code. And I can imagine, with Python, somebody might get confused with this indentation convention. I know as a newbie, but then yeah. So Flora, you can choose the one that you feel will be best for you. But if you ask me, I'll tell you, start with Ruby. Ruby is beautiful. Python is really strong. That's what I'll say. So Sledge is asking a question. What are some best practices as a dev? Let me start again. What are some best practices a developer should know when developing a project that can potentially scale? That's a really good question there. Probably let me start while you think about about that. Um, Talking about scalability, um, I think that goes a long way in helping you choose what framework or what platform you should build on. Um, for example, I mentioned Ruby, right? Ruby doesn't scale as well as probably Node.js, right? And especially if you are working with concurrency and asynchronous data transfer and all that. If you're building a chat platform, for example, I wouldn't tell you to use PHP, for example. I wouldn't tell you to use C. I'll tell you to go with probably Node.js, right? So it basically depends on what you're trying to do and um, certain programming platforms scale better than others, so that could also help you decide. But best practices I would say is that if you want to scale well, you should try to be as efficient as possible. You should learn into details. What are the best ways or the most efficient ways of performing your functions and your methods and all that. So a typical example is with data retrieval. If your data retrieval process is not efficient enough, your database loads will take so long if your queries are inefficient. There are a lot of practices that you need to know. For example, if you are doing MVC and then you are retrieving records within your view, there's a high tendency that you would have something we call the n+1 problem, where basically for every record you're making a query, but which is bad. So you should be making as few queries as possible. I don't know if that's too technical, but then uh, Raymond, what can you add to that? Those are the things that come off the top of my head.
So I think he hasn't given me like a lot of details. So I think we should try to make sound architectural decisions. And as you mentioned, around the database, it would be nice to just take some time and think about how you want to structure your tables and the relations between them. Because what I've realized is certain decisions you can kind of correct them as you move forward. But if you make bad architectural decisions, you realize like in the future it's hard to change, and that might come to bite you like later as you gain more users or achieve scale. So that's all I have to say.
All right, great insights there. So I think someone also asked a similar question about what programming language you would recommend for a beginner. Yeah, I mentioned the one Python is a great start if you want to start there.
Python.
Um, like JavaScript as well is a good, as in JavaScript is used both in the front end and the back end as well. So um, you can learn JavaScript. Is a great tool. It's used in a lot of places. So JavaScript, Python, my bias Ruby as well. um, so guys, we are almost getting to the end of today's session. If you have any final questions, you can drop them in, and then we'll answer them before we close for today. But yeah, my guest for today has been Raymond Akornor. He's a back-end engineer at Ampersand Technologies. And the topic for today has been how to stand out as a developer. We stream live to Facebook, YouTube, Periscope. Raymond, do you have any final thoughts, final words about how to stand out as a developer? What would be your concluding thoughts about this?
So if you ask me, one of the things I think is most like underused resource we have as programmers is GitHub. And just think about it. You can just think about anything in your head, probably search it, and then someone has built already. And if you can just take time to spend some time there, open projects, and look at how people go about building like different things, there is a, like a lot to learn from there. Another thing is you also learn good like practices as a programmer. Coming into this field, I think what we often think is only the most important thing is that you know how to write the code. But whenever you work in a team, you realize communicating your thoughts is equally important. And the projects like React and large open source projects are on GitHub. And sometimes if you aren't too busy, you should take some time to just see how they go about opening pull requests or how they go about opening issues and how they go about discussion different ways to solve a problem. And you realize like there's a lot of things you haven't just been looking at. So if you have the time, spend a little more time than you do on GitHub and try to explore and see how people go about like doing things. That's
Right.
that's that's all I have to say.
Nice, nice. It's been great. It's been a great discussion today, Raymond. So guys, thanks so much for joining. I would want to know who was in the stream today. So if I haven't seen your name in the chat section, please let me know who was on the stream today. And yeah, Raymond, thanks so much for joining in the session today, and we'll obviously keep in touch.
Thanks, my guy.
Great insights, and I'll catch you later.
All right, my guy. You go.
All right, people. So um, I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see those of us that were able to join today. Just let me know in the chat section below. Just put down your name, where you're viewing from. If I haven't seen your comments, thanks so much for joining, guys. Tati was here. Florent, Elikem, thanks for joining. Isaac Opong, thanks so much for joining. Diane, thanks so much for joining. Thanks so much, Yao. Yes, so don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube if you enjoyed this. Don't forget to like the video. You can also follow my social media channels. It's Tech Confab on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. Just search for Tech Confab. You'll find it. If wherever you're watching, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just go over to YouTube and type Joe Budu and you find the YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button. so that you get notifications whenever I start to stream. Yeah, so thanks for joining, Griff. Thanks for joining, Manolo from in Kumasi. Nice one, everyone. So today we talked about how to stand out as a developer. There'll be more interesting topics that I'll be talking about as the days go by. I stream every week on Wednesday, 7 p.m. GMT. Just 1 hour of goodness. So make sure you join me next week, same time, same place. Don't miss out. I'll have an interesting topic in the area of artificial intelligence, innovation, science, and technology. All right, so thanks so much for joining, guys. I'll catch you guys next week. Bye.